The small music hall smelled faintly of old wood and polish. Light filtered through tall windows, dust dancing in thin streams. She stepped inside, her shoes clicking softly on the floor. The room was quiet, almost empty except for a few people settling into the chairs, chatting quietly among themselves. She could hear the distant hum of voices from outside the hall and the faint sound of someone tuning another piano somewhere down the corridor. She felt a flutter in her chest, a mix of nerves and anticipation. Today was not like any other day. Today she had been asked to play a simple piano tune. Something easy, something that anyone could play. Or at least that's what they thought. She carried her sheet music carefully, almost cradling it in her hands as if it were fragile. The paper was familiar, marked with pencil notes from her own practice. She had spent hours learning it, running her fingers over the keys at home, making sure each note was just right. But today, it felt heavier than usual, as if every eye in the room would be watching her, judging her every move. She wasn't a stranger to performance, not exactly. She had played in small recitals before, but those were comfortable, safe. Today was different. Today, she felt the weight of expectation pressing on her shoulders, even if no one had demanded anything more than a simple tune. A music teacher approached her, smiling kindly but with an intensity in the eyes that made her heart beat faster. "It's a basic piece," the teacher said, gesturing to the sheet music. "Just play it as it is. Don't worry about anything else." The words were meant to reassure her, but instead, they made her feel constrained. Her mind immediately started racing. Just play it? But what if I make a mistake? What if it sounds dull? She wanted to show what she could do, not just follow notes on a page. Still, she nodded, took a deep breath, and walked toward the piano at the front of the hall. The piano itself looked majestic under the stage lights. It was polished, black, and gleaming, a grand instrument that seemed almost alive in the quiet room. She ran her fingers lightly over the keys before sitting down, feeling the smooth surface beneath her fingertips. The room seemed to hold its breath with her, quiet except for the occasional cough or rustle of paper from someone adjusting their seat. She could hear her own heartbeat, thumping in her ears. Her palms were a little sweaty, her stomach tight with nerves. She closed her eyes for a moment and tried to calm herself, thinking of the hours she had spent practicing, the late nights when only the moon and the piano keys witnessed her dedication. When she opened her eyes, she noticed the audience more clearly. It wasn't a large crowd, just a few people scattered through the chairs, some leaning forward slightly, others sitting back with arms crossed. Their faces were polite but neutral. No one seemed to expect much. Perhaps that was a relief, or perhaps it made her feel even more aware of the pressure. It was strange, she thought, how an audience could feel so intimidating and yet so easy to ignore at the same time. The contrast made her stomach churn with anticipation. She positioned her hands over the keys, remembering the first note, the gentle press that would start the melody. She took another deep breath. Her fingers hovered, trembling slightly. The sheet music was in front of her, each note clear and simple. It wasn't a difficult piece, not at all. Anyone could play it and sound fine. But she wasn't anyone. She wanted more than fine. She wanted it to matter. Even before she played a single note, she felt a spark of determination. Maybe it was nerves, or maybe it was something deeper. A quiet fire inside that told her she could take this simple piece and make it her own, if only for a few minutes. The first notes came slowly, almost hesitantly. She played the basic tune as instructed, the familiar melody filling the small hall. It sounded ordinary, simple as everyone expected. A few people nodded, some whispered softly to each other, but no one was particularly focused yet. That was fine, she thought. Let them think it was ordinary. Let them relax. She had a plan. Not yet, but soon. She just needed to find her rhythm, feel the keys, and let the music flow through her rather than just out of her fingers. As she continued, she felt herself becoming more comfortable. The nervous fluttering in her chest began to settle, replaced by a quiet awareness of the notes, the weight of her fingers, the echo of the sound in the hall. She started to notice small things she had never paid attention to before. The way the piano's pedals changed the tone of the notes, the slight resonance in the room, the way a simple chord could feel rich and full if played with care. She allowed herself to become absorbed in these details, to forget, for a moment, that anyone was watching. It was just her and the piano, and the music was alive beneath her fingers. Her mind wandered briefly to the people she knew who would have loved to hear her play. Friends who encouraged her, family who quietly supported her, even strangers she had seen at other performances who had smiled as she played. She felt a little warmth in her chest, remembering their smiles and cheers, their subtle ways of showing they believed in her. That thought gave her courage, a quiet strength she hadn't realized she still carried. Maybe it wasn't about showing everyone here what she could do. Maybe it was about honoring the music itself, letting it speak for her before she ever tried to make it speak for the audience. The music teacher, standing at the side, watched her carefully. The teacher's expression was calm, almost unreadable, but she could feel the weight of those eyes on her. She wondered if the teacher suspected she might do something more than just play the notes. She forced herself to focus, remembering the rhythm and melody, feeling the keys under her fingertips, listening to the sound resonate through the hall. The tune was simple, yes, but she began to imagine the story behind it, the feeling it could carry if she let herself go deeper. A quiet excitement bubbled inside her. Perhaps this wasn't just a simple performance after all. She noticed that the audience's attention was slowly shifting. Some people stopped whispering, tilting their heads as they listened more closely. The room felt warmer somehow, not just in temperature, but in atmosphere, as if the music itself was drawing people in. She felt a thrill at that, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. Maybe they didn't expect much, but maybe, just maybe, they were ready to be surprised. The thought made her pulse quicken, her hands ready to move with more confidence, her mind eager to explore the possibilities within this simple piece. Her fingers danced lightly over the keys now, following the melody but also experimenting subtly, adding tiny flourishes, small variations in timing that weren't in the sheet music. Each note felt more alive, more expressive. She could feel the energy of the room changing, growing more attentive, more present. She allowed herself to enjoy the moment, the thrill of creation, the quiet power of music to transform a space. Even the simple notes now seemed to carry weight, and she could hear the story they told, even in their simplicity. It was as if the piano itself had recognized her intent, responding to her touch with deeper resonance. She paused briefly, taking a breath, and looked around. The audience seemed more engaged now. Eyes were fixed on her hands, on the piano, on the subtle changes in the music. She could feel their curiosity, their growing interest, and it gave her a new kind of courage. She realized that the simple piece she had been asked to play was just the beginning. It was a doorway, an opportunity to explore, to take something ordinary and breathe life into it. She felt a thrill of anticipation. The real music was waiting, hidden just beyond the notes, and she could reach it if she dared. Her heartbeat steadied, her fingers relaxed, and a quiet smile spread across her face. She knew she was ready. The simple tune had served its purpose. It had grounded her, given her a rhythm and a sense of focus. Now she could let her creativity take over. She could feel the fire of inspiration beginning to rise inside her. A slow burn that promised something more, something extraordinary. She glanced at the music teacher again, whose eyes now reflected a hint of curiosity, perhaps even a bit of wonder. The stage was set, the audience waiting unknowingly for what was about to come, and she was poised on the edge of transformation, ready to turn the ordinary into something unforgettable. She took a final deep breath, letting it fill her lungs and calm her mind. The simple piano tune had opened the door, but beyond it lay possibilities she had only dreamed of. The keys felt warm beneath her fingers, the notes resonating with quiet promise. The room seemed to hold its breath with her, the audience leaning forward, drawn in by the subtle change in energy. For the first time, she felt completely in control, completely alive, and completely ready to show not just a tune, but herself through the music. She sat at the piano, her hands hovering just above the keys, feeling the smooth, cool surface beneath her fingertips. The first few notes of the simple tune had already escaped, gentle and careful, almost timid. She played slowly, deliberately, wanting to make sure each sound was perfect. The music was soft, familiar, safe. That was the point, she reminded herself. A simple tune was all that was expected. But the more she played, the more she realized something she hadn't considered. Even simple music could feel heavy under the weight of expectation. Her chest tightened. Her fingers moved, but her mind raced with doubts. Is this good enough? Are they listening? Do they even care? She could feel the audience's eyes, even if some faces were neutral, watching her, waiting. The small whispers among the chairs made her heart skip. A cough here, a chair scraping there, nothing loud, but everything felt amplified in her ears. Every subtle sound seemed to remind her that she was on display. The piano, once her refuge, now felt like a test she wasn't sure she could pass. She tried to shake the nervousness off. She closed her eyes briefly, letting the melody fill her mind. She had played it countless times at home, alone in her room, without anyone listening. Back then, it had been simple, easy, comforting. But now, in the hall with even a small audience, the tune felt different. Each note carried a weight she hadn't felt before, and every pause between them seemed louder, more critical. Her fingers hesitated on the keys, and the notes came out slightly slower than intended. She cursed herself silently. Why now? Why here? A few people in the audience shifted in their seats. One leaned forward, resting elbows on knees, chin in hands. Another glanced at their phone and then quickly put it down, as if realizing they shouldn't be distracted. She could feel the energy in the room changing subtly, from polite background noise to mild attention. That should have calmed her, but instead, it made her more aware of herself. Every mistake, every small misstep, seemed suddenly noticeable. She pressed on, trying to focus, trying to remind herself that it was only a simple tune. She remembered the teacher's words. Just play it as it is. The advice had been meant to free her, but in the quiet of the hall, it felt constraining. The simplicity of the tune suddenly seemed like a cage. She wanted to do more, to express herself, but she also feared making a mistake. Fear and desire collided inside her, leaving her frozen for a moment, her hands hovering over the keys, unsure of which direction to take. Her eyes flicked to the sheet music. The notes were clear, unchanging, simple. She had played them countless times. Still, her mind imagined them in a different light. What if she added a small pause here, a little variation there? She shook her head. No, she reminded herself, the teacher said simple, nothing more. But the thought lingered. The possibility of something beyond the expected tugged at her. Her fingers itched to move, to explore, to break free from the strict lines on the page. The room remained quiet, the audience seemingly lost in thought or distraction. The faint hum of the ventilation and the occasional cough were the only interruptions. She realized she could almost hear her own heartbeat in the silence. It was loud, steady, a constant reminder that she was alive, that she was here, that she had a choice. She took a deep breath and forced herself to focus on the keys, the notes, the sound. She reminded herself that mistakes weren't failure, they were part of learning. And yet, the hesitation remained. Her mind drifted to her first lessons, sitting in a small room with a piano that had chipped keys and a squeaky bench. She had learned there that music wasn't just about hitting the right notes. It was about feeling, about letting emotion flow from your hands to the keys to the air around you. She had forgotten that for a moment here, caught up in nerves and expectation. But now she remembered. The thought brought a small, quiet smile to her lips. Maybe she could still do it if she could trust herself, if she could let go. She adjusted her posture, sitting taller, shoulders back. Her fingers found the keys again, lighter this time, less hesitant. The melody flowed once more, slightly more confident, though still careful. The audience began to notice. A few heads tilted forward, and the rustle of paper faded. People were listening now, and the awareness both thrilled and frightened her. She wanted to do something unexpected, to show what she could truly do, but the fear of failure held her back, keeping her tethered to the simple tune she was supposed to play. She closed her eyes again, letting the sound of the piano surround her. The hall seemed to shrink, the audience melting away until it was just her and the keys. The notes weren't perfect, but they were hers. She could feel the music moving through her. A gentle pulse, a quiet rhythm. For a brief moment, hesitation vanished, replaced by a sense of calm determination. She realized that playing it safe wasn't necessary. The music wanted more, and perhaps she could give it. Perhaps she could step beyond the simple melody and discover something unexpected. A single chord resonated in the hall, filling the space. She held it slightly longer than usual, letting the note linger. She noticed the subtle shift in the room. Eyes widened slightly, attention sharpened. The audience wasn't fully engaged yet, but they were aware, curious, waiting. That small reaction gave her courage. She could feel her confidence building, slow and steady, like a candle flickering to life. It wasn't bold yet, not fiery, but it was enough to remind her that she had control. She could guide the music, shape it, breathe life into it if she dared. She took another deep breath and continued, letting the melody flow with slightly more ease. Her fingers moved more fluidly now, less self-conscious, more connected to the sound. Each note felt like a step forward, a small victory over the lingering doubt. She reminded herself that she didn't have to impress anyone. She didn't have to meet anyone's expectations. She only had to be honest with herself, to let the music reflect who she was at that moment. That thought freed her just a little. Her hands no longer trembled as much, and the sound became richer, fuller, more alive. Still, fear lingered at the edges of her mind. What if she overstepped? What if she lost control? What if the audience rejected what she was about to do? She could feel the tension building inside her, a tight knot in her chest. But alongside it, there was excitement, a thrill that made her pulse quicken. She realized that the fear and desire were not enemies. They were companions, pushing her to focus, to pay attention, to create something true. She welcomed them, let them guide her hands, let them sharpen her awareness. As she played, she began to notice the subtle reactions of the audience. Some leaned forward, eyes fixed on her hands, listening intently. A few murmured softly, intrigued by the slight changes in rhythm and emphasis she was introducing. It wasn't much yet, but it was enough to encourage her. She felt a spark of daring flicker inside, tiny and cautious. Maybe she could do a little more. Maybe she could take the simple tune and let it grow, just a little, just enough to show the music she was alive. Her fingers danced lightly over the keys, experimenting with small variations. A note lingered longer, a pause stretched slightly, a gentle embellishment added here and there. The changes were subtle, almost imperceptible, but they were hers. She felt a thrill, a quiet rush of energy, as if the piano itself recognized her intent. The room seemed to respond, the air shifting slightly, carrying the sound with more presence. She realized that the music could move people, even in small ways, even with hesitation still lingering in her performance. The simple tune was no longer just a tune. It was becoming a story, a reflection of her emotions, a bridge between her and the audience. She felt her confidence growing, slowly, steadily. She reminded herself to breathe, to let the music flow naturally, to trust her instincts. She began to feel a connection to the hall itself, to the keys, to the sound reverberating around her. The music was alive, and she was alive with it. Hesitation still lingered, but it was tempered now with possibility, with excitement, with the quiet knowledge that she could take this further if she allowed herself. Her eyes opened, scanning the audience again. They were watching more closely now. Faces that had been neutral now reflected curiosity, anticipation, even admiration. She felt a thrill at the thought that they were noticing, that they were waiting, that they were ready for something more. It wasn't just about playing the notes anymore. It was about creating, expressing, daring to step beyond what was expected. The hesitation remained, yes, but it was now accompanied by a spark, a tiny flame of courage that promised more. She took another deep breath, feeling the weight of the keys beneath her fingers, the resonance of each note in the hall. the quiet hum of attention from the audience. She realized that she could choose to stay safe, to finish the tune exactly as written, or she could take the risk and explore, to see where the music might take her if she let go of fear. The thought thrilled her, made her pulse quicken. For the first time, hesitation was no longer a wall. It was a threshold, a moment before something extraordinary. She paused for just a fraction of a second, letting the silence hang. The audience leaned in, sensing the subtle change, though they didn't yet know what it meant. She felt her heart pound, a mixture of fear and excitement, but underneath it, a quiet certainty. She was ready to take the next step. The simple tune had served its purpose. It had grounded her, prepared her, shown her that she could control the music even under pressure. Now she could move beyond it, slowly, carefully, and let herself shine. She pressed the keys again, feeling the familiar melody under her fingers, but something had shifted. The hesitation that had weighed on her in the earlier moments was gone, replaced by a quiet sense of curiosity. She could feel the music around her, not just in the notes, but in the air, in the walls, in the subtle vibrations that filled the hall. It was as if the piano had been waiting for her to understand it fully, to let it breathe, to let it live. The simple tune that had begun so cautiously now felt like a doorway, a chance to explore, to stretch beyond expectation, to step into something she had never dared before. Her fingers moved more confidently, adding slight variations to the melody. A note held longer here, a soft trill there, subtle changes that were hers and hers alone. The sound seemed richer, fuller, as if the piano itself responded to the smallest adjustments, the gentlest touch. She felt a thrill run through her, a mixture of fear and excitement, as if she were about to cross an invisible line, one that separated ordinary performance from something extraordinary. She didn't think about the audience or the expectations or the teacher's instructions. She thought only of the music, of the energy rising from the keys and flowing through her, and of what it could become. The audience, at first polite and distracted, began to notice. A few heads turned slightly, ears pricked, eyes widening. The small murmurs and whispers faded, replaced by attention, curiosity, and a growing sense of anticipation. They didn't know yet what she was about to do, but they could sense it, feel it, almost taste it in the air. The room itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting. She smiled faintly, though her face remained calm. She didn't need their applause yet. She only needed the music, only needed the moment, only needed to let it flow. Her fingers began to move faster, more fluidly, as if they had found a rhythm of their own. The simple tune was still there, recognizable in its bass form, but now it carried layers, textures, harmonies that weren't written on the page. Each note seemed to resonate deeper than before, echoing through the hall with a richness that surprised even her. She could feel the fire inside her, a slow burn at first, now spreading, igniting her passion, her skill, her creativity. She was no longer simply following instructions. She was commanding the music, coaxing it, shaping it, letting it grow into something unexpected, something alive. The first few people in the audience leaned forward, their eyes fixed on her hands, tracing the movement, following the sound. A subtle gasp here, a quick intake of breath there, told her that they had noticed the change. She didn't slow down. She let the sound build, layering in small flourishes, slight improvisations that grew bolder with each passing measure. The piano responded beneath her fingers, keys springing back, pedals adding resonance, and the music swelled in the hall, filling every corner, wrapping around each listener like a wave. She felt herself smiling, a small curve of delight, though her focus never wavered. She imagined the melody as a story now, a narrative of emotion, tension, and release. Each note was a word, each phrase a sentence. She could feel the peaks and valleys of the story, the pauses that created suspense, the sudden bursts that brought excitement. It wasn't just playing. It was storytelling, pure and unfiltered, born from her own imagination and her connection to the piano. She felt free, liberated, alive in a way she had never felt when simply following sheet music. The fire inside her had grown, and she was ready to let it burn. The audience shifted again. More people leaned forward, some unconsciously holding their breath. They could feel the music changing, moving beyond expectation, breaking free from simplicity into something dynamic, alive, full of energy and emotion. A few whispered softly, unable to contain their curiosity, while others sat still, transfixed, eyes wide, as if afraid to blink and miss a single moment. She felt the room's energy feeding her own, the attention, the anticipation, the wonder. It all gave her more courage, more strength, more willingness to explore the music further. Her hands moved faster now, but with precision, with purpose. She began to layer the melody, adding trills and arpeggios, unexpected turns that made the simple tune blossom into something complex and thrilling. The sound was fiery, passionate, almost alive. She felt it surge through her whole body vibrating with the rhythm, the crescendos, the sudden soft drops that made the music pulse like a heartbeat. Each note carried meaning, each chord a brushstroke on the canvas she was painting with sound. She had never felt this connected before, never this bold, never this alive. A subtle change in tempo here, a delicate pause there, and the audience reacted. Heads turned, mouths parted slightly in surprise, some leaning forward as if to get closer, to hear more clearly. The simple piano tune they had expected was gone, replaced by something far beyond imagination, something that demanded attention, that demanded awe. She noticed the teacher at the side, arms crossed, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, a mixture of disbelief and admiration. The simple instructions had been shattered, but the result was magnificent, and even the teacher couldn't hide the amazement. She lost herself in the music. Time became irrelevant. The hall, the audience, the small worries and doubts that had plagued her just minutes ago, they all faded into the background. It was just her, the piano, and the fire of creation burning brightly between them. She felt every note, every chord, every subtle nuance, as if the music itself had a life and she was its conduit. The melody flowed, unpredictable yet perfect, simple yet profound, familiar yet transformed into something breathtaking. Her breath came faster, her heart raced, but she didn't pause. She didn't need to. The music was her guide, her voice, her declaration. The audience was completely captivated now. Eyes followed every movement of her fingers. Ears hung on every note. Hearts seemed to rise and fall with the rhythm. Some people leaned forward instinctively, unable to resist the pull of the sound. Others sat motionless, as if in awe, unable to react, afraid to break the spell. A soft murmur spread through the back of the room, a quiet acknowledgement of something extraordinary happening, though no one yet knew how to express it. She could feel it all, feeding her, giving her more energy, more freedom, more daring. She pressed harder on a chord, letting it resonate fully, filling the space with power. A trill ran up the keys, rapid and fluid, cascading like water over rocks. She added a subtle pause, then shifted the melody in a direction no one expected, blending intensity and delicacy, fire and softness. The room vibrated with the music, every corner alive with sound. She felt the music moving through the audience, touching them, awakening something in them, and it thrilled her. It was no longer about following instructions, about performing a simple tune. It was about expression, about truth, about letting the fire inside her burn for everyone to feel. Her hands moved with effortless speed now, but with complete control. She layered melodies, shifted rhythms, added dynamics that made the simple tune unrecognizable in the best possible way. The audience gasped quietly, whispered in amazement, some mouths hanging open in disbelief. They hadn't expected this, they hadn't prepared for this, and yet they were completely captivated. She smiled faintly, a soft thrill of satisfaction running through her, though her focus never wavered from the piano. The music was alive, and she was alive with it. She could feel the energy building, the fire inside her growing stronger with every note. Her fingers flew across the keys, dancing, striking, caressing, coaxing the sound into something extraordinary. Each chord, each trill, each pause was intentional, expressive, alive. The audience leaned forward, completely enthralled. Some whispered in amazement. Some sat still, absorbed, unable to move or speak. Every eye followed her hands. Every ear caught the resonance of her expression. Every heart seemed to beat in rhythm with the fiery masterpiece she was creating. She reached a climax, a surge of speed and intensity, notes overlapping, layering, weaving into a complex, beautiful tapestry of sound. The music roared, thundered, yet never lost its clarity. Every subtle nuance, every delicate shift was perfect, intentional, alive. The hall seemed to vibrate with the energy she had unleashed, and she felt it within her, in her chest, in her hands, in every nerve and muscle. The music had become more than notes. It was fire, it was life, it was her. Then, slowly, she began to bring it down, tapering the intensity, softening the notes, letting the fire fade gently into a delicate whisper. The hall, which had been fully captivated, held its breath in the quiet aftermath. Her fingers lingered on the final chord, letting it resonate fully, letting the sound carry itself, letting the room absorb it. And then she lifted her hands, heart racing, chest heaving, breath uneven, a wide smile of quiet triumph on her face. The room was silent for a moment, absolute silence. Then, as if released from a spell, the audience erupted. Applause thundered, cheers rang out, people rose to their feet, clapping, shouting, laughing in awe. Some faces shone with tears, some wide-eyed, some laughing in delight. The reaction was overwhelming, almost too much to process, yet deeply satisfying. She let herself smile fully now, overwhelmed but proud, knowing that she had taken a simple tune and transformed it into something unforgettable. The applause began softly at first, a ripple of hands clapping, voices murmuring in surprise. She had expected polite claps, a few nods of appreciation, maybe a quiet well done from the teacher. But this was different. This was a wave, sudden and full, washing over her, echoing off the walls of the small music hall. She sat frozen for a moment, letting it hit her, letting the sound of their amazement sink in. Her chest swelled with a mixture of relief, pride, and disbelief. She had done it. She had gone beyond the notes, beyond the expectation, and people were noticing, feeling, reacting. The room seemed alive now, buzzing with energy. People leaned forward, clapping louder, some rising to their feet. Whispers of astonishment filled the hall. "Did you hear that?" someone murmured. "I didn't know a simple tune could sound like that. She's amazing," another voice said softly, almost in awe. Eyes sparkled, smiles spread, and she could feel the waves of emotion circulating around her. It wasn't just applause. It was admiration, surprise, delight, and something deeper, something unspoken that connected her to the audience in that moment. She allowed herself to smile, a real, wide smile this time. Her hands had rested on her lap, still trembling slightly from the intensity of her playing, but now they felt lighter, free. She realized she could hear herself breathing, steadying after the adrenaline of the performance. Her heart raced, but in a joyful way, not the nervous pounding from before. The fear had been replaced by exhilaration, by the knowledge that she had taken a risk and it had worked. She had trusted herself, and the music had rewarded her. The teacher, standing to the side, finally clapped, his expression unreadable for a moment before it broke into a grin. He shook his head slightly, almost in disbelief, then clapped louder. It was a look of admiration, of surprise, and maybe even pride. He had expected a simple performance, something safe, something routine. Instead, he had witnessed something extraordinary. She felt a rush of quiet satisfaction at that glance, at that recognition, knowing that she had exceeded even the person who had given her the simplest of instructions. People began to rise, some slowly, some quickly, and the applause intensified. A few audience members shouted words of praise, some clapped so hard their hands stung. There were smiles, laughter, even tears on some faces. She could see it clearly, the impact of her music, how it had reached them, moved them, awakened something inside them. It was overwhelming, almost too much, but in the best possible way. She felt connected to them. A shared moment of wonder, a brief, unspoken understanding that they had all experienced something rare and beautiful together. A woman in the front row wiped a tear from her eye, whispering to her companion, "I didn't expect that. I can't believe she did that with just a simple tune." A man nodded, shaking his head in astonishment, clearly still trying to process what he had just heard. She noticed a few younger listeners, wide-eyed, mouths slightly open, frozen in awe. The reaction wasn't just polite appreciation. It was raw, honest, and deeply moving. She felt it in her chest, the warmth, the electricity, the thrill of knowing that her music had truly touched people. She stood slowly, almost hesitant, as if unsure whether she could fully step away from the piano yet. Her legs felt slightly weak, knees trembling from the intensity of the performance, but she managed a steady step forward. The applause followed her every movement, a continuous wave of admiration that seemed to lift her off the ground. She wanted to speak, to say something, anything, but the words felt small and inadequate compared to the music, compared to the reaction, compared to the fire she had just shared. She allowed herself only a nod, a quiet acknowledgement of the audience, before returning her attention to the piano, letting the energy of the room settle around her. The audience wasn't ready to let go. They clapped again, louder, longer, demanding an encore even if no one spoke it out loud. People leaned over to neighbors, whispering about the incredible skill, the unexpected brilliance, the emotion behind each note. Some tried to discuss it in words, but most just shook their heads in awe, unsure how to describe what they had witnessed. The air in the hall was electric, charged with excitement, appreciation, and something almost reverent. She could feel it all, feeding her, surrounding her, enveloping her in a glow of accomplishment she had never known before. The teacher finally stepped forward, clapping one final time, and gestured toward her. "That was," he started, searching for words. "Incredible. Absolutely incredible. I didn't expect anything like that. You've shown something beyond the notes, something real, something alive." His voice carried a mix of admiration, astonishment, and genuine respect. She felt a rush of warmth, a quiet pride swelling inside her. She had done more than play the piano. She had created something unforgettable, something that resonated with every person in the hall. As she looked around, she noticed people standing on tiptoe, craning their necks to see her better, trying to catch every subtle expression, every movement of her hands. Some clapped again, some whistled softly, some simply stared, lost in disbelief. The energy was overwhelming, but in a way that made her pulse race with joy. She had never imagined that a simple piano tune could evoke such emotion, such reaction, such intensity. She had transformed expectation into something extraordinary, and the audience was living in that moment with her. Her chest swelled with gratitude. She thought of the hours she had spent practicing, the late nights alone with the piano, the moments of doubt when she had wondered if she could ever do something truly remarkable. All of it had led to this. All of it had built toward this single moment where she had risked, had dared, and had been rewarded. She felt humbled, exhilarated, and alive all at once. The applause and cheers were not just for her skill. They were for her courage, her willingness to step beyond what was expected, her ability to pour herself into the music. People began to gather closer, moving toward her instinctively, eager to witness more, to express their admiration. A few approached timidly, shaking her hand, complimenting her, praising her talent. Others simply stared in wonder, eyes shining, words failing them. She realized in that moment that the music had done more than entertain. It had connected, had inspired, had moved hearts. She had not just played. She had shared a part of herself, and the audience had received it fully, openly, without reservation. The applause continued, gradually subsiding into murmurs of amazement and discussion. People whispered to one another, replaying moments in their minds, trying to capture the brilliance they had just experienced. She noticed a few younger musicians in the crowd, faces bright with inspiration, silently taking note of the passion and skill they had just witnessed. She felt a quiet smile tug at her lips, knowing that perhaps she had given someone a spark, a small moment of hope or encouragement to pursue their own music with heart. The teacher stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You've done something rare today," he said softly, almost reverently. "Not just playing the notes, not just performing, but creating something real. You've reminded everyone here what music can be when it comes from the heart. I'm proud of you." She nodded, feeling a lump in her throat, a mixture of emotion that words couldn't capture. The validation was not just about skill, it was about recognition, about understanding, about being seen for more than the surface. She glanced back at the piano, running her fingers lightly over the keys one more time, almost in a silent thank you. The instrument had been her partner, her tool, her voice. Without it, none of this could have happened. She felt a quiet gratitude toward the piano itself, toward the music that had guided her, toward the fire that had risen inside her and carried her through hesitation into brilliance. She realized that this performance would stay with her forever, a memory of courage, passion, and transformation. The audience began to file out slowly, still talking quietly, sharing their wonder with one another. Some turned back to give her one last smile, a nod of respect, or a whispered compliment. She watched them go, feeling a deep sense of connection and fulfillment. This was more than applause, more than recognition. It was proof that music, when played with honesty and courage, could touch people, move them, and inspire them. She had stepped into that moment, embraced it fully, and emerged changed, as had everyone who had listened. She finally rose from the piano bench, her hands still tingling from the intensity of the performance. Her legs felt slightly weak, her chest heaving, but the exhaustion was sweet, satisfying. She had dared to transform the ordinary into the extraordinary, and the reaction from the audience had confirmed it in ways that words could never fully capture. She took a deep breath, letting it out slowly, savoring the moment, letting it sink in fully. As the hall emptied, the energy lingered. She could still feel it vibrating in the air, in the walls, in the echo of the final chords. The applause, the whispers, the astonished faces. They had left their mark on her as much as she had left hers on them. She felt a quiet pride, a deep satisfaction, a sense of accomplishment that would stay with her for a long time. She had taken a risk, followed her instincts, and created something unforgettable. The applause had faded, but the memory of it still lingered in her chest. She walked slowly toward the door of the music hall, each step feeling heavier and lighter at the same time. Heavy with the weight of what had just happened, light with the realization that she had achieved something she had only dreamed of. The hall was quiet now, almost empty, and the echo of her final notes lingered like a gentle hum in the air. She paused for a moment, letting the silence settle around her, savoring the stillness after the storm of sound and emotion. She ran her fingers lightly over the piano one last time, almost as if to say goodbye, almost as if to thank it. The instrument had been more than a tool. It had been a partner, a friend, a voice for everything she had felt but couldn't say. She felt gratitude welling up inside her, a deep, quiet warmth. It had been a long journey to get here, filled with practice, late nights, doubt, and perseverance. And now, in the stillness, she realized that all those hours, all that effort, had led to this one moment where she had truly connected with herself, with the music, and with everyone who had listened. The teacher approached her, carrying a small folder of notes and a calm expression that seemed almost gentle after the intensity of the performance. "You've done something extraordinary today," he said quietly, as if the words themselves were too heavy to speak louder. "I've seen many performances, many students, but what you just did, it's rare. You went beyond the music, beyond expectation, and created something unforgettable." She nodded, swallowing hard, feeling a lump in her throat. Praise had never felt so heavy, so real. It wasn't just about skill, it was about recognition, understanding, and the courage to take a risk. Outside the hall, the evening air was cool, carrying the faint sounds of the city. Distant cars, voices from the street, the occasional bark of a dog. She stepped out slowly, taking it all in. Her hands still tingled from the intensity of the performance. Her heart raced, and her legs felt slightly shaky. But there was a lightness too, a freedom she hadn't felt before. The world seemed brighter somehow, more vivid, more alive. She realized that what she had done wasn't just a performance for the audience. It had been a transformation for herself. People began to approach her as she left the hall. Some were audience members who had stayed behind, eager to express their admiration. They spoke quickly, excitedly, trying to put into words what the music had made them feel. "I've never heard anything like that," one person said, eyes wide. "It was magical." Another nodded, almost breathless. "You made the music alive. I felt it in my chest, in my heart. I don't know how you did it, but thank you." She listened, nodding, offering quiet smiles, feeling warmth spread through her at each reaction. She had shared a part of herself, and the audience had received it fully, openly, and with gratitude. Some younger musicians approached timidly, eyes shining with inspiration. They didn't ask questions. They simply looked at her with awe, trying to understand how she had made the simple tune so extraordinary. She knelt slightly, meeting their gaze, offering a small smile. "Keep playing," she said softly, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling in her chest. "Practice, feel the music, and trust yourself. It's not about following notes perfectly. It's about letting the music speak for you." They nodded, wide-eyed, as if receiving a secret, a glimpse into the magic they hoped to create themselves one day. As the crowd thinned, she walked alone along the quiet street, the city lights reflecting softly on the pavement. Her mind replayed the performance in fragments. The first hesitant notes, the spark that had ignited, the fire that had grown into a brilliant blaze, and the stunned silence of the audience before the applause. She could still feel the thrill, the pulse of energy that had run through the hall, the electricity in the air, the shared experience of music moving hearts. She realized that this would stay with her forever, a memory she could return to whenever doubt crept in, whenever fear threatened to hold her back. She thought of the hours she had spent practicing, often alone, often questioning herself. She remembered the times when she had doubted her talent, wondered if she would ever be more than ordinary, wondered if she had the courage to risk. And now, in the quiet aftermath of what had been extraordinary, she realized that the risk had been worth it. She had trusted herself, followed her instincts, and allowed the music to flow through her. And in doing so, she had touched other people in ways she had never imagined. The teacher's words replayed in her mind, echoing with their weight. "You went beyond expectation. You created something unforgettable." She smiled softly, letting the thought sink in. It wasn't about being perfect. It wasn't about meeting someone else's standards. It was about authenticity, courage, and passion. She had discovered that the true power of music came not from the notes on the page, but from the heart of the person playing them. The memory of the audience's faces, the wide eyes, the tears, the applause, they confirmed it. She had spoken to them without words, had communicated something deeper, and they had received it. Later, as she returned home, she replayed the performance in her mind, examining it from every angle. She thought about the small choices she had made, the subtle variations, the pauses, the flourishes. She realized that each decision, each moment of daring, had contributed to the transformation. It had not been luck or accident. It had been intention, courage, and connection. The memory of the fire she had felt, the electricity of the music, the thrill of improvisation. It stayed with her, filling her with a sense of possibility and hope. She thought about the future and what this moment could mean. Invitations to perform at other venues might come, opportunities she had never considered. Recognition might follow, maybe even admiration beyond her small circle. But more than that, she felt something even deeper. The knowledge that she could trust herself, that she could take risks, that she could create something extraordinary even from something simple. That knowledge was more valuable than applause, more lasting than any recognition. It was hers to carry, hers to nurture, hers to build upon. She also thought about the people she had inspired. The young musicians, the audience members who had seen and felt something they hadn't expected. They had received a spark, a reminder of what music could do, what passion could do, what courage could do. That thought filled her with quiet joy. She realized that performance was not just about herself, but about sharing, giving, connecting. The fire she had brought to life on the piano had reached beyond her own hands, beyond her own heart, and touched others. That was the true magic of music, and she had experienced it fully. Sitting quietly later that evening, she reflected on the journey that had led to this moment. From the earliest lessons, struggling with simple scales, learning to trust her hands, learning to feel the music, to the hours alone practicing at home, to the fear and hesitation she had felt before the performance. Every step had been necessary. Every challenge, every doubt, every failure had prepared her for this one night, this one transformation. She realized that growth often came not from comfort, but from pushing through fear, taking risks, and daring to reach beyond the ordinary. She thought about the piano itself, silent now in her small room, waiting for the next moment when it would be called upon. She felt a deep gratitude for it, for the instrument that had allowed her to express herself so fully. It had been more than wood and strings. It had been a companion, a mirror, a voice for what she had carried inside. She knew that she would return to it again, and each time, it would help her explore, create, and transform in ways that went beyond notes and rhythm. The piano had been a partner in her courage, a witness to her fire, and a gateway to her expression. The memory of the audience lingered too. She could still see their wide eyes, hear their gasps, feel their energy. It was a connection she would never forget. It reminded her that her talent was not just for herself. It was something to share, something to give, something that could inspire and move others. That realization filled her with a sense of purpose, a quiet determination to continue, to keep exploring, to keep daring. She understood now that the music would always be bigger than the performance. It would be about connection, emotion, and the fire that could be sparked in hearts and minds. As the night grew late, she finally rested, letting her mind wander through the memories, the applause, the fire, the joy, and the calm that followed. She understood that this night was only the beginning, that the courage she had discovered within herself would carry her forward, through practice, performances, challenges, and triumphs yet to come. She smiled softly, knowing that she had touched lives, discovered herself, and embraced the power of her own talent in a way she had never imagined. And as sleep finally took her, she felt a quiet certainty. The simple tune had been just a beginning, the spark that ignited the fire. From now on, she would play not just for herself, not just for expectation, but for the music, for the moment, for the connection, and for the extraordinary possibilities waiting in every note.